How's it?
Great.
We got thumbs up from other folks.
I love this. Okay. So, excuse me a second. Hey, teenagers, we can see you in the doorway. Yeah. So just make a decision about where you're going to be. Okay. I'm in a meeting. Yep. It's April school vacation week, and my daughter just had a surgery, so she's recovering. Here. Okay. Please go upstairs. Great.
Oh. Well, thank you for joining us. I know it's the middle of the school day. And yeah, we are recording. Welcome to Fellowship Fridays, TabletopEDU. We're joined by some of our regulars, including Ian and Pepin and George and Matt. We may see some others trickle in. Today, we're talking with Dr. Maryanne Cullinan, who is my co-director here at TabletopEDU.
Yep.
Yes. And so if you're folks who are familiar with the Kickstarter going years back, she's the co-author of the book and the mastermind behind at least definitely more than half of the stuff we talk about. She's widely published, has some really cool stuff coming out all the time, including in Teach. Let's see here. I have it in front of me. Teach RPG Volume 2. And so I previewed some of your work this week on LinkedIn, including your dissertation and this chapter 1. So I'm hoping we can get into that and just a little bit of a preview too. Please remind me if I don't bring this up. I want to show you guys what we have in store for the next couple months. For Fellowship Friday, we have actually some stuff scheduled for a change instead of flying week by week. And then a little preview of the book. We want to tease the book we're going to announce by the end of May. So hold me to it. But Maryanne, thanks for joining us. Where do you want to start here with what you think about with TTRPGs and teaching and learning?
Yeah, gosh, well, I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to see some faces with some names that I've only seen, like, hi, Pippin. And yeah, I'm Maryanne Cullinan. I live in New Hampshire, and my day job is I am a middle school teacher, which is ages 10 to 14. And I teach everyone who's a square peg in a round hole, which means I have everybody from kids who are just still working on learning, reading and basic math skills, through special education and kids with behavioral issues, all the way up to what we would have traditionally called gifted and talented. But I think my bread and butter is hyperactive 7th and 8th grade boys is who I spend most of my time with. Those are my people. So yeah, I'm just really excited to be here and share stuff with you. I'm really interested in using role-playing games in education as a way to really enhance students' ability to interact with the material and each other. I have been thinking a lot in my career about engagement and authentic engagement and the difference between sort of passive receptive engagement and the kind of engagement that has you building your own learning as you go, and role-playing games is one of the ways we can do that. I also think a lot about, I teach theater stuff. I do a play every year with 70 children, and which is about 40% of my school. And we run a daily television show. And I am not a sports person, but I understand that when you're on a really functional, healthy, well-coached sports team, you all get this sort of gathering group hive mind, right? Like you're all together in this, and maybe you wouldn't have been friends otherwise, but now you're a team. And I see that also happening in a lot of the work that I do with theater and our television show. And I am super interested in how we can sort of like manufacture that with role-playing games, right? By creating these groups and then creating the opportunity for students to have shared fictional experiences. They really change how they see each other and the dynamic with it. And so I'm thinking about all of those things, but also because I am a middle school educator, there are things that I must make sure that children understand before they they leave my space. And so I think we have a really great opportunity with role-playing games to really help students engage more deeply in the content that they need to, but also with each other. So we're sort of getting both things at once. So
Oh, it's well put.
that's what I'm thinking about all the time in the back of my mind.
Yeah, well, your work reflects that. You know, I hadn't spent any amount of much time with your dissertation before this week. And then I found it was open access, which I love. Is it Lesley University?
Yep.
And
in Cambridge, Massachusetts. So.
And I learned more about what you did with that summer school program, which I thought Magic, is it called Magic Farms?
Yeah, Wild Magic Farms. Yep.
Wild Magic Farms.
Yeah.
And it sounds like you kind of just put it into practice, right? All of this. And that seemed to me
Right.
like an awesome site to do that.
So one of the things that, one of the reasons that I am a teacher with students is because as soon, people will be like, well, you have a PhD now, aren't you going to go teach college? And I'm like, yeah, someday maybe. But one of the things I really love is working with students and putting this work into practice, because there's lots of theory, but there's nothing quite like having 20 wiggly 14-year-olds in front of you to really, keep the old blood pumping. But yeah, if I could talk a little bit about Wild Magic Farms. So if you are not a special educator or sort of involved in special education, you may not know this, but so we have this concept of summer school. And summer school is like, oh, come, and if you fail the class, whatever, like take it out and do some enrichment. That's not what the extended school year is. It happens in the summer, but extended school year is for students with often multiple disabilities where their team has made the determination that if they are out of school for, yes, thank you, extended school year, ESY. If they are out of school for the 9 weeks of school or however long they are, they will forget enough of what they've already learned that they will be at a disadvantage and will not be able to equally access the next year. And these are kids who are often multiple years behind where we would consider grade average. Anyway, so ESY is really for students who have those kinds of needs. And so the purpose of ESY is not actually to teach you anything new. It is to make sure you don't forget the stuff you already know. And it is notoriously terrible because no one wants to go to school to learn the things they already learned. And these children are not stupid, they're disabled. And so they know nobody else has to go to dumb school and learn the things they already learned, right? That's how they feel about it. And so my sort of goal is, of course, I want them to keep up and learn the thing, keep up with the skills they already have. And I am not supposed to teach them anything new, which is wild, but that's like a quirk of the system. But I also need them to not come out of it hating school more, right? I need them to have an experience where if they are not forgetting anything, if there's no regression, and yet they now hate school even more, I have not done this child any favors. Ultimately, I've set them up for future failure, right? And so it really, this was like, okay, this is for me the ideal place to try a role-playing game, and this is my strong suggestion is if you are trying to use a role-playing game with students, the ideal place to start is the place that you feel like is the least effective in your practice already, right? You're going to want to start it in the thing that you already want to think about all the time, but that's probably really good. So leave that alone. Come to that later. Start with the thing that you hate thinking about because they also hate thinking about it.
No, it's a good tip.
Right? I mean, and so for my students, that's math, writing, and reading. They hate all of those things, which makes school rough. And so the thinking is each one of these students has an individualized education plan. And so they all have unique goals. And some of the goals are the same, but many of them are not. And so the system has to be flexible enough that everyone can be doing completely different academic tasks. But all of those tasks are generally within the realm of reading, writing, and math. And some students didn't have goals in some of those areas. So the shtick of the story is that you are a cryptid rancher, and you are raising cryptids to then release into the wild to make the world a more magical place. And so I am a really big fan of this thing called self-determination theory.
Oh, I was going to share that slide. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And self-determination theory is this thing that came about around 2000 by Ryan and Deci. And there's this guy named John Marshall Reeve who's done a lot of work with it. And these are students who do not get to have autonomy, competence, and relatedness almost ever in school. The three big sort of components of self-determination theory is this idea that human beings are looking for autonomy, where they have choice in their lives. They're looking to be able to show competence in their lives or be able to get to competence. And they also want to be with other people, and they want to be able to share in that. And so if you think about being a middle schooler with multiple academic disabilities, you are being shuttled from place to place almost constantly without any control over that, even more so than your peers, right? Adults are in your business constantly. You feel stupid all the time because you cannot read the things, you're being pulled out of class to do things that are visibly a lot younger in terms of the development than your peers. And it goes really fast for you. And then you are also disconnected from your peers in a lot of ways. And so I'm like, how can I create something that's going to help build this in these students in a school setting? And so the first thing is everyone has to read a lot. That is part of reading, is reading. And they have to, but they all have different reading levels. So I wanted them to be able to choose their reading. If they're going to be reading, I want them to be able to choose it. So there are 12 different animals that you can get. And there are 3 different biomes. So there are 4 animals per biome, right? So you set up your farm in any way you want to, and you build a little board and you draw it out. And then you get to choose which animals seem the most interesting to me. And then you become an expert in that animal. And, oh yeah, look at this. The students must fluently read its lore to peers and write a structured paragraph. That's true. And so what they had to write was determined by what their goals were in their IEP. So some students wrote a sentence, some students wrote 3 paragraphs, some students had to write paragraphs that showed a really interesting hook and a wrap up, right? So everybody's goal for success was slightly different based on what their goals were. But everybody reads at their reading level about a page worth of pseudo scientific content about the animal, right? It's set up to be like an information text because that's something that they need to be able to have a lot of familiarity with. So it has all the markers of an informational text. It has, dates, it has subheadings, things like that. And then they read it to me, they read it to other people in the classroom, and some of them have oral fluency goals, so I have to look at that, or reading fluency goals, X amount of words per minute. And once they can do those things, and they write a little paragraph, and once the paragraph has met criteria, then they receive a breeding pair. And the breeding pair, yes. And we do not get into the details of breeding. Middle schoolers love breeding.
A different class. That's a different class, yeah.
Yeah, that's a different class. We don't talk about genders. We don't talk about anything. You just have 2. This is a math exercise. And so every day, every 2 of them creates 1 more. right? So that's, and we do the math on that. And so they see very quickly the progress, right? They can see their competence because it's growing, and they can see, like, it's very visual. And everyone has their own boards, but everyone's working together to try to make the world a more magical place. And we're like, we set up goals as a class for how many of these animals we will have total. And the sort of other piece, so like, where does math come in? You do math problems to get money for the store. Your math problem is money. And so if I create math problems that are on their math level and that are meeting the goals that they're supposed to meet, and once they have the math problem done and they feel that it is correct, they call someone over and they explain their thinking. And if they're wrong, then the teacher will show them why they're wrong and make a mark on the paper that just says, like, assisted or taught or, oh, independent. And then that actual piece becomes the dollar for the store. So I collect them, and then I can look and see, even if I'm not the adult that they were speaking with, oh, they were able to do 10 of these problems independently. It's time to now add in this sort of next level of challenge. And then the store items are used because once a day, something happens, and the wheel of fate, right?
Yeah.
The middle finger of fate happens, and you might have, like, pirates come and steal your animals, and then you would need to get a private investigator to get them back. Or you might have wind, and so if you don't have any walls, they're too wind blown to. Yes, there's all sorts of things. This is a small amount of, we had a wide variety of things that might happen with the Wheel of Destiny. And so you could buy items that would allow you to mitigate that. And that encouraged you to do that work.
So can I ask, how many kids did you have? And were most people kind of fired up about the game concept? Like, were they like into it sounds like it worked generally. Did you have any issues with, like, some people, I'm assuming there's always some people who are just like,
well, yes, they liked it. Everybody likes collecting pets. I mean, so, right, this was a choice. Collecting pets was a choice. The site I'm on, their middle school is 4th grade through 8th grade, which is wild, but it's because of the way that their buildings are set up. So I had kids that were ages like 8 or 9 up through 15. So, right. But a lot of, they would go for it. Most of them, they did want to be there, right? They wanted to be there. There were reasons they had to come check on their animals. We were excited to see them. It felt very different than traditional school. And that was really exciting. Yeah. Because that's the first thing. A lot of these students with multiple disabilities, many of them have very poor attendance at school, right? They don't have, their families don't have the executive functioning to get them there, or maybe don't see the value of it, and they hate being there. So that why fight with my 15-year-old who's a foot taller than me to go to school, right? So that was really exciting. And for the most part, everyone did buy in. It's really fun to be able to pick your own animal and I did a lot of sort of soft skill moves outside of it. Like, I brought in all my stuffed animals that I have that are really weird. I have a lot of, like, 3-eyed frogs and, dragons and things. So people could, like, carry them around while they worked if they wanted to. And we did a team meeting every day and really cheered each other on. But also, I would say, I think that this question comes up a lot when we're using role-playing games. A lot of, like, well, what if kids don't like it? I'm like, right, well, what if kids don't like taking a multiple choice test?
Yeah.
Are we like, oh, that sucks. I'm sorry that you don't love taking multiple choice tests. You don't have to. No, we're just like, take it. I don't care. Right. And so, it was really successful. And actually, so I did that work in the summer of 2024. And I went back and I did this work again in 2025, and I'm going back again. Like, they want me to keep coming because it's being really successful. And many of my students are the same, right? Because you only have a finite number of kids who meet this criteria. And so some were different, but some were the same. And the ones that came back were so excited. And I found their work from the year before, so they got to start ahead, which has probably never happened to these children in their lives, right? And I was like, well, if you have to have special, you have to be a second year, you have to have shown that you can take care of a certain amount of animals before you can go into the ice biome, right? And they're like, So, right. So there are kind of ways to get around that, but I do think as much as we can go back to that self-determination and really think about like what kind of engagement that we're asking out of kids, like that, if we're asking for more in-depth engagement from kids and providing the circumstances where that can happen, that will stay with them. And that was really, really awesome to see the kids who came back and who were excited and remembered things about what we had done the year before, because these are not kids who like traditionally remember things about academics in a way that maybe we would hope, right? That's why they're there. So yeah, it's been great. And I think it's always so interesting going back to the same place and doing the same work, and then going through and doing that work again. My second year, so many of the students that were there did not have goals all the same. My first set, they all had reading, writing, and math goals. But last year, some of them did not have some of those goals. And so like my students with 0 math goals, instead of giving them math problems, they had goals around like self-editing and capitals and punctuation. And so being able to do some of that was really great. And then being able to say like, look, your goal says you will identify capitals and appropriate punctuation. You can do that now. So now we're going to do proper nouns. And they're like, whoo, right? Because it feels great because they can see that they've met their goal. And that's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. What an incredible program you've developed. And it seems to me like, what do you think? I mean, how scalable is the could you hand a manual to other people running summer school across the US? And summer school is kind of as I understand it, sort of a weird phenomenon in the US in how we structure our academic years, which are kind of agrarian, where we have like 9 months of school year, and then kids get the summer off to go help on the farm, which nobody does anymore. But and so that's where we see all the slippage, right, with kids who.
What we know is that kids do come back with slippage, but it's super interesting. Almost all, they will all have made it up by the end of the first quarter.
Okay.
And right, except for this profile of students. And something really interesting that we've learned is it's very frustrating and wildly unfair, as many things are. Where we see slippage the most is students who have under-resourced families, right? Because what will happen is students with under-resourced families will either maintain or slip a little, and then the people who are going to summer camp, overnight summer camp all summer, invest in being enriched, going on vacation, doing like things that are not just sitting there, like being entertained by a TV. They continue to make progress, and those kids don't. So sometimes it's not even slippage, it's just that everybody else kept going.
Yeah.
And this is a real issue because if both parents or the one parent is working 12 hours a day, there's not a lot they can do about it. Like they're just kids just in the apartment for, the summer. And so not everyone has a great summer. I wanted to back up to a comment that Matt made about incorporating universal design, right? And I think, right, that's kind of the idea. This, as much as possible, if we can incorporate a lot of different ways that kids can access the concepts, that's the ideal thing. And I think so often, truly, it's hard for classroom teachers who have not necessarily had any training and have lots of kids to really think about, how can I differentiate this curricula so that people can access, both practice the skills that they need to be to sort of keep them moving forward, and access this new set of concepts. And we're really not great at that, and supporting teachers how to do that. So my thinking with this, as much as possible, is like how build it into the structure, so it's less of something that teachers need to be thinking about on the fly. And to answer your question, Garrett, so we've taken this idea of the Wild Magic Farms and done it, iterated it in lots of different ways. And I have a colleague called Sarah Halliday, who's really great. And she was our reading specialist and did a lot of work with kids. And so did a sort of only reading and writing version of this in our school. And then she has since gone to a different district and is sort of doing some of that work there too, because it's really just sort of a structure that gives us an excuse to do a lot of reading and writing and very specific math practice.
Oh, wonderful. What an incredible program. I didn't realize you were still running these and sharing it out. So that's fun. What a gift, to the community. That's super exciting. Well, it's been, So you mentioned, and I'd love to entertain questions from the folks, if they have any for Maryanne. You mentioned one of the theories, self-determination theory, which I think just so wonderfully illustrates how games work to keep people engaged and excited, and to almost scaffold growth, right?
Right.
And it's a theory that's often used in like counseling or therapy to understand, I think, dysfunction and depression sometimes, but using it in this context is really interesting to think about learners who aren't engaged. And
yes, and so there's kind of two pieces to self-determination theory. We talked about the autonomy, relatedness, and competence piece, right? That's the sort of underlying assumption of this theory. But how it relates, this other guy, John Marshall Reeve, really did a lot of thinking about how this relates to education. Okay. And there's he suggests that there's 4 levels of engagement that kids have. And the first one is behavioral engagement, which is like, we are literally just sitting here. My body is doing the thing. I am behaviorally engaged, right? And that's that really passive, potentially passive, lowest level. I am doing the thing. And the next one is sort of an emotional engagement, which is like, I am here, I want to do this. Or I'm buying in, right? And then we get to the next level, which is sort of that cognitive engagement, which is, I am capable of learning these new concepts and interacting with them. And that is where the sort of Ryan and Desi stuff stops. But John Marshall Reeve said that the actual sort of most engaged is agentic engagement, where you are now creating your own understanding and work. And so that's kind of where I'm trying to land the kids, right? I want them to be able to access it cognitively. I have to have it at their reading level. We're doing it on the goals that they have. But then they're also sort of building this idea of this farm and figuring out their own strategic goals that don't really matter, but matter to them, right? They don't matter to their success academically, but it become the vehicle for them to want to have that cognitive engagement.
Oh, yeah, no. And when I think about really great tabletop role-playing games experiences, agency is the key word. And because people feel so empowered in those games and those worlds they create, those shared fictions, I think part of it is because they have so much ownership, which, and power. There's different ways in which this manifests in those game environments. Sometimes it's just their character. And so in a traditional TTRPG experience, you have complete ownership of how you build that character, what they say, what they do, how they look often, how their story kind of interacts and so forth. So that's really powerful. And then there's also that world. And so if you're a game master, right, you have this world and story you're co-creating. So there's all that sense of agency. But in a learning environment, I really think about project-based learning. I see that as a kind of parallel here. So the framework, I just want to touch on this because that was a new name to me. That's different from the ICAT or ICAP framework.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's a separate piece. This was.
I mean, they're
right.
There's two people eating the same elephant from different ends, right? Yeah. Like it's the same kind of idea, right? And the ICAP framework is another one that's come out, I think, in 2014. That is this idea that we want kids to be at the level where they're co-generating their own stuff, right? It's that agentic engagement. And so again, like their most basic stuff is they call it passive with attentive, right? I'm sitting here, I'm paying attention. And then the active is like, well, I'm manipulating the things, I'm putting in the answers, like I'm doing it, right? But really I'm doing the thing I'm being asked to do. And then we sort of get up to this like constructive level of engagement where I'm constructing my own meaning, I'm pulling a lot of pieces. I'm not just sort of like going through the task anymore, but the task now involves me doing some generative work too. And then their sort of highest level is a co-generative work where I'm now doing that work with others. So, you know, we're all sort of stumbling around, like I'm seeing some nodding, right? We all kind of know this intrinsically. Like there's a difference between just sitting there and being like, yeah, I'm here, and being like, okay, but if I do this and I try this, right? And then it's much stickier too if you've created it yourself. You know, what you were saying about role-playing games, they're co-generative, right? We travel in parties, and even this simulation role-playing game, I mean, the role is very thin. You're a farmer. You know, every day we would ask them a question about their farmer, and they got to make it up, and the answer did not matter at all.
Interesting.
Right?
Okay.
It didn't matter at all. What do you look like?
Yeah.
You know, like draw a little picture of you. When is your birthday? Like just really silly little things.
Love
but
it.
They had no mechanical impact on the game at all.
Right.
But they started to, because they were working in groups, they were starting to like trade items with each other, care about what happened with other people. And so I think that the shared fiction can be really, really thin, and it still causes people to start to feel like they're in a group together. And I think that's really an important piece of it.
I wanted to just bring this question up from Professor Greener, who is, as I understand it, a sociologist at the University of Glasgow, I think, not Edinburgh. I think I got that right this time. He asks, he finds this inspirational. My question is about how do we use these ideas to teach students about substantive area, perhaps something like climate change, for those of us who accept it as real. And we, you know, I believe we here in the room all accept it as real. Yeah. But I won't speak for other people.
We're not having that conversation. We're good. Yeah. So you would do it really differently than this, right? But conceptually, it's still that same thing. Like, how can we develop a system that can get us up to the part where we're doing our own co-generational work? And I think it would really depend, right? The purpose of this game is very clear and it's very bounded. So I think that it has to meet, it has a very bounded set of time. I only have 12 3-hour chunks. That's it, to start from the beginning to the end. And right, and I have to do these very specific things. So for something like that, you have a lot more flexibility. And I think part of it is, it goes back to what do we want students to know and be able to do at the end of it?
Right.
And so do we, like, what do we want them to know about climate change?
Yeah.
Right. And what sort of skills? Is it about information literacy?
Right.
Is it about being able to look at all this and say, I can read these and determine that climate change is real, or real in this way, or having this impact? Because if I was doing something like that, then I might make a game where whatever you want them to know and be able to do at the end is the thing they need to be doing the most in the game. And so, right, if it's about information literacy and being able to make up my own mind based on the facts that are in front of me, right, then that might look like a lot of work in sources, and then comparing notes with each other, and then maybe, you know, fighting bad guys of disinformation who are, you know, who become easier to fight the more information you have and the better you can say your sources, right? But if it's about the science of it, then you would do it differently. Or if it's about convincing people. So I think the sort of challenge and gift of role-playing games and simulations as a pedagogical thing is that there's the sky's the limit, baby.
Yep.
Right. But I think that's how we start.
Well, I'd love to have a bit more extended conversation with you, Ian, if you want to chat and workshop some ideas. I work with professors. That's kind of my area, is doing instructional design in higher ed. So I'd be happy to chat about that course or something if you wanted to tinker with it. I love that topic because climate change brings to mind not just bad guys, but incredible disastrous events, right? You could bring in all this drama
for simulations and role-playing games.
Yeah.
Because no one wants the orphanage to burn down in real life. That would be terrible. But when the orphanage burns down for pretend, it's slightly hilarious and also terrible, right?
Right. A kind of dark humor there. Yeah. But the idea of climate refugees and, you know, increased like droughts from extreme weather. I mean, like, this is real stuff.
Right. But you can make it really extreme in the course of a game, right? And have a lot more agency. And George, it's for you, baby. Man, if we can get these middle schoolers to have like even a little bit of information literacy, right? Who is telling the story?
Well, that's a great segue. And I know we're getting to the end of our time here. We always go a little over, so I should really schedule these more for 45. But information literacy, and I want to change gears a little bit to do a little sneak peek on our next book, if that's all right, and then talk about our next week guest.
Very smooth, Garrett.
What's that?
That's very smooth.
Thank you. Not bad, right? So George is, of course, I forget your exact title, George, but I know you're at Indiana State University and you do some really awesome work with professional development.
State Library, yeah.
Got it. And are well connected there with networks of librarians. There's some really cool research happening right now across the U.S. Through very well funded grant through I think it's Museum and Library MLIS group, and they're studying how TTRPGs essentially create civic literacy and how TTRPGs are being used in libraries, essentially studying empirically what Susan Harmon talked about in her dissertation with John Dewey and TTRPGs. So really cool stuff. And they're looking at, hey, who are the programming librarians who are having success with this? What are the elements of those programs? And then what are the barriers for other libraries to start these programs? And so they're identifying, you know, how could we support? This is my understanding of that research. And so obviously I'm very excited to look at what comes out there. Our guest next week, and we're going to have a series of guests who are involved in this program. Our guest next week is Adam Davis, who is with Foundry 10, who's all over the place, an OG of applied games and learning. Looks like Matt is coming back in here. I'll admit him again. So Adam will be back, and he'll be talking about his experience with Foundry 10 and his support of this grant. And then the next 2 weeks, we have other librarians from different universities coming to talk about their work supporting the grant. We are drumming up a book to support some of this work. And it's a book, I think, for anybody interested in applied TTRPGs for teaching and learning, but it's really focused on the idea of helping getting people excited about research, information literacy, and also developing a love of books. And so one of the frames of the book is TTRPGs, modules, micro games, programs, camps that could be run at libraries. And so what's fun about those are we can pre-package modules and programs that librarians can take out of the box and just run and not have to cook up or take things off the shelf that don't quite fit. And we've built some of these games to be really custom fit for these spaces, such as larger groups or games that don't require a GM or somebody with a lot of experience, or very complex games. And so some of these games scaffold up. They start very simply, and then each week they get a little more complex. Some of the games have elements that get students into the stacks, is what we say. So you start at the table, you're rolling, but then you need to go and check out a particular area of the library or a resource or talk to somebody, this sort of thing. But let me share, there's a lot more to come on that, but let me just give a little sneak peek. We also have a section in there talking about how we think TTRPGs actually promote research literacy or information literacy. But that could be a bigger grant down the road. But let me share my screen and just sneak peek a little bit of the art. And this is something I'm really excited about. Our first book, it's here.
While you're getting set up, I just want to say, so Garrett dragged me onto LinkedIn this week. And
Yes.
So if we're not friends on LinkedIn, we should be, then we can talk more.
Yes.
So,
welcome to LinkedIn, by the way.
Learning how to be friends with everybody on LinkedIn. There's a lot going on there. Everyone's talking about it.
I've been enjoying LinkedIn, and that's a whole separate thing, but I find it, of the social media platforms, I'm actually enjoying LinkedIn.
Yeah. So anyway, if we're not networked on LinkedIn, we should be. So then we can talk more about all this.
So our art, we're using human artists. We have some wonderful folks who have signed up. They've worked in print shops. They do kind of this linograph style art. These are 2 little vignettes they've produced, concept art. It says in the final pieces, but we're doing what's called 2-color printing. And so it's only going to be black and then this purple color. And so it kind of is going to look like an old school game book in that way, kind of more of a budget print. But we think, just kind of having that constraint there is going to make the book more affordable and accessible for people and less environmentally, costly to print. But also it gives it that kind of fun retro look that I think book lovers are going to really appreciate. So it's really a book for librarians and book lovers. And hopefully that we can kind of spread that to some of the users. So this is just a sneak peek. There's a lot more to come. And so we'll be kind of teasing some of this as we go through the month, which is new. So and we're certainly having a lot of fun. Let me, while I just have this up, share one last thing. I think I stopped sharing, and then I will show just a little more of our schedule that's coming down the pike here. And thank you guys for joining us here. So right, here we are. I will share this. I want to work this up as like a poster you can check. So we're at May 1st. Maryanne is here. And then next week, May 8th, we'll have Adam Davis. There's a ton to talk about. Super experience. He'll be with us in person at the conference in Columbus at the end of June. And also Play, Make, Learn in July. Chris Baker is coming, MLIS grant. He's at the Wisconsin library system, really experienced librarian. He's written some great history-based TTRPGs, kind of like state history, colonial and frontier history of the US through TTRPGs. So there's it's got some great experience coming there. Keaton Wadzinski's coming in to talk about his experience. And then Sarah White is coming from the University of Washington library system, who's also really involved in the MLIS grant, and they have their own experience to share with programming. And then we'll get into June and some other stuff. So a lot of fun stuff here. Let us know, guys and gals and folks of all stripes, what questions you have, what you want to get out of these programs, what you're liking, what's working, what's not. I like to think this is very grassroots. And so thank you for participating. And thank you for Maryanne for sharing all your.
Well, I'm excited to be able to come during my summer vacation. Normally I am right in the middle of, let's see, it is costume design with 5th graders at this time. Normally, so.
Nice. Yes. You're incredibly busy. I can't believe the work you do as a full-time middle school teacher and administrator. And also, like, it seems to me you do the work of a full-time academic as well. You're like publishing papers and mentoring younger academics and helping people learn how to do research. And it's just like, how do you do it? I don't. And you have so much going on.
Don't watch TV. That's how I do it.
You don't watch TV? Is that what you said? Yeah.
I participate very little in behavioral engagement.
You still play some TTRPGs though, right? You have a Friday
but that's not passive engagement. I do very little passive engagement. But yeah, I play TTRPGs twice a week. My neighbors.
Wow. Your neighbors. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
Any other, well, I don't want to hold everybody, but questions or thoughts here from anybody before we break for the week?
Just thank you. That was very inspiring. Lovely to hear how you engage with those curriculum. It's not a very common thing to have that in the Netherlands. Pretty much when we hit summer, everyone has summer, and they kind of continue with those delays, or they are held back a year, which is something that happens. So it's nice to hear, because we've many students that sometimes go to the States for those summer programs, but it's very nice to hear what it's like and how you've used TTRPGs to inspire the kids there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming. It's really been nice to see everybody.
Great, folks. All right. Thank you. We'll keep the conversation going in Discord. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.